All right, how's it going, everybody? We're back, and I have spent a long week trying to figure out exactly how I wanted to do this, and I think I finally got it worked out. I did have to call in some expert advice here. I've also had checked out a video on YouTube that actually gave me the idea for this. I'll link it up in the corner so you guys can go check it out if you want to see it. And I also had help from Shadow Rogue and from Ethrin trying to work out different things. Shadow Rogue gave me this timer over here, which is a 180 second timer. And then I decided I wanted to try this idea. So this is what Overmind and I got set up today. Well, he set it up. I stood around and watched and complained. But we've been watching it. It works. And I'm going to basically have him walk you through setting it up down here, or walk me through setting it up down here so you guys can see it. So let's get this party started.
Yeah, so basically this is an exploded version of what's up here for clarity. These inserters correspond with up there. So instead of these being two chests, this would be where your fission reactor would go. So this will input the new fuel cells. This will take out the old fuel cells. So to start with, first we need a memory cell to count how many has been taken out so we know how many to put back in. We don't want to put in too much. You can configure this to be 1, 2, 3, whatever, all based on how you initially seed it, which I'll show whenever we get it set up. So to hook this up, we'll hook this into the memory cell. The memory cell is just an arithmetic combinator. The inserter is just set to read hand's contents, but otherwise nothing else for its operations, and make sure to pulse it. This is very important. From down here, this will go down to the arithmetic combinator, which is just reading the 232 fuel rods and adding 0. The purpose of this is so that whenever, for example, if the signal is 3, then it will always be outputting 3 and then reading back in 3, because we want to hook back in the input and output. You generally want to do that with a different color cable just to help keep networks distinct, because if you connect it with red, then you're going to start overflowing signals. So try to keep that a different color, and things will just work a lot better. So with it always reading the same input as output, to adjust it, we need to tick a signal for a specific value for just a single tick. By connecting it to this inserter up here, it's going to pulse out a single signal of whatever it picks up. We want to make sure that it only picks up one at a time, just to keep things nice and clean. So set this to 1 for override stack size. Whenever it's fine if you do more on the output, but you don't want it on the input. It's just best to keep it uniform everywhere. So set it to 1. So every time it pulls out 1, it will tick 1, which will then take the old value from here, which starts at 0. So the 0 plus the 1 that came from this ends up as 1 on the input. So then on the next tick, it will output 1 on the output and read it in on that same tick. And it'll just keep doing that. Every time it pulls 1 out, it would count up again to 2, and then it would count up again to 3. It's a very simple memory cell.
We also wanted just so it's clear, there is a green wire going from the output to the input. With these other cables, sometimes it's not clear to me, but if you could turn it sideways, which I can't turn it sideways, you could see it better, but there is a green wire right there.
That's actually why I like using a lot of mods that recolor the wires. I like to recolor the wires to various other things, but yeah, the input and output is connected by green, and we will attach our input and output that we actually want via red. That way we don't conflict with signals. So
Okay.
next we need to actually count down the memory cell whenever we put something in, because we used up a slot essentially. So on the inserter that puts things in, we want to make sure its override stack size is set to 1 as well. Otherwise, you're going to be putting in way too much and everything is going to get screwed up as it counts up to infinity eventually. So from this inserter, we'll connect it to this Arithmetic Combinator adjacent to it on its input. The purpose of this is because we want to negate it. So we're just going to multiply it by 1. You'll have to actually type in -1. You won't be able to use the slider for this. Now, it's going to put in actual 232 fuel rods, but we want it to count down the memory cell of the used up fuel rods. So you'll select the consumed 232 fuel rods here, whereas we're reading the ones we're adding in here. So every time it adds in one, it's going to tick 1 out here, which on the next tick is going to output a -1 of the consumed one, which we will then attach down to the memory cell. So this will count it down. Next thing we want to do is react to the fuel cell, to the memory cell. So whenever the memory cell is at a value we want, basically, as long as it's non-zero, it has anything that it has an empty slot, in other words. So as long as it's greater than 0, we'll output a set signal of just 1. This set signal we will use in a little bit. So this is one of the inputs that we need. This reads whenever there's an empty slot available in the fission reactor. To actually key this, you'll have to manually put in one item into the fission reactor. So I am going to dump a single thorium-232 fuel rod into the, well, you would do it into the input of the reactor. And then whenever it finishes using it up, then it's going to pull it out. So I dump a single one in here. And if Bear hovers over the Arithmetic Combinator memory cell here, you'll see that its input signal is now 1. The input and output signals will generally always be identical, except for the specific tick that it's changing, in which case the input signal will be higher or lower by 1 in that one very specific tick.
Okay.
So whenever it pulls out and whenever it'll eventually put back in, we'll get to that later, but I put 1 fuel into this, and I can't trigger it right at the moment, but we'll get to this in a moment to demonstrate how it goes up whenever we have it actually triggering. So this will be one of the inputs that we use to detect if we need to do something. It doesn't do anything yet. This is purely detection. Next, we need to determine when we actually want to do it, because we don't want it running all the time. Just this by itself, you could feed this right back up into this inserter up here. What that would allow you to do is to always just put 1 single fuel into the fission reactor. It won't ever have more than that. That might be fine for what you want in some cases, but Bear in this case is only wanting it to run whenever the power is getting low. So we need to detect that. There are 2 different ways with their own pros and cons. You can either hold the steam in a tank, or you can read the power level via an accumulator directly. Reading the power level from an accumulator directly gives you a little bit faster response for whenever there's a specific drop. This is much better for backup power systems, things like that. Bear wants everything to be power-based, so this is what he is using up there. The steam tank is better for an overall hysteresis balancing to make sure you never actually run low or high, because a single storage tank like this one is equivalent to near like around 100 accumulators. Like, it stores a lot of power. Because of that, it also gives you 100 accumulators worth of actual variance range that you can work with, so that you can respond much slower to whenever something's getting high or low, which allows things to ramp up or down much more easily, so you don't have to rush. For both cases, we'll start with just a simple case. So with the accumulator, we'll just hook it up to a decider combinator because we want it to react at a specific value or lower. So we hook up a wire to the input. On the accumulator itself, I'm going to output an E signal just for electricity. And down here on the decider combinator, if Bear clicks on it, you'll see that it takes the E signal. And if it is less than 100, the accumulator puts out the amount in percentage. So from 0 to 100. So if it's less than 100, that means you're losing power. If you're losing power, that means that the power is not being made or you're using too much. You might want an alarm for that case. But regardless, you need power getting made now because you're running out and you're going to be out very soon. So if E is less than 100 at all, we send out the set signal of 1. Same thing that we had on the output of this decider combinator from the inserters for the slots. If you were using steam, you would have the storage tank hooked up to 2 combinators, one to read the high value and one to read the low value, because the low value is when it is going to turn on. And then whenever you start making power and the steam builds back up, then whenever it reaches the high value, you're going to have it turn off. Therefore, you have it run more efficiently and you don't have to worry about things flickering on and off, which bugs a lot of people, including me. So with the S, this far left one, we'll have it turn on whenever steam is less than, say, 5,000. With the when we want it to turn off, or as it's called, reset, because we are going to deactivate the signal, we'll have it deactivate whenever steam is above 20. Nothing happens between 5 and 20, though. The reason why nothing happens is because both of those outputs goes into this decider combinator. The way this one is set up is called an RS latch. Specifically, you can turn it on with the S signal, the set signal, and you can turn it off with the R signal, the reset signal. We could also have used this for the memory cell in this specific case if we hooked it up just a little different, and if you only ever wanted one piece of fuel in there ever. With a memory cell, it saves a single combinator in this case, and it allows you to configure it for multiple cases. For the set reset latch, just like the memory cell, it is going to have a single wire run between its input and output. Generally, you want that a different color as well. It depends on your specific use cases. So I just hooked up the input and output to itself on the same thing with green. And the output of these 2 other decider combinators on the left are going to its input. Whenever we set the input, so whenever the steam is less than 5,000, it's going to put out the S signal, which you can see in the tooltip on the right if Bear hovers over it. Which will then set the input signal on this. Hold on a sec. Bear configured this earlier. Let's see, set is less than reset. Just checking something real quick.
Okay.
Yeah, that's supposed to be the other way. Bear had it set the wrong way. So whenever you open the decider combinator RS latch, Bear will show you that the condition is when S is greater than R, then you output S as 1. That combined with the input and output together means that whenever there is a set signal, then it will set the output to 1. But since it's connected to the input again, that's going to make the input 2, which still means it's going to output 1. So it's constantly inputting 2 and then 1. If I disconnect the set signal, emulating, for example, that the steam went above 5,000, the set signal is no longer inputting into this. But because it's still outputting 1 for the set, going back to its input, that means it's still set. So it holds the value of that signal. If I set the reset signal to less than 20,000 to signify that the steam has reached too much, so the reset signal got set, and the reset signal is now 1. Since 1 now equals the set signal, or is higher than it, that means that it is not going to output the signal because S is no longer greater than R. Because of this, the output is now empty, and you no longer have a signal. If I change that back so the reset signal is no longer there, you see it still remembers that it is outputting nothing. If I hook up the set signal again, you see that it now outputs something. It's a very simple latch. You either flip it on with S, and even if you remove all the signals, it stays on, or you flip it off with R, and even if you remove all the signals, it still stays off.
Okay.
So next for these, we want to figure out when we should actually activate the inserter to add more fuel. So power is getting low. Whether that signal comes from steam or electricity, it doesn't matter. We'll use the electricity one for now. So we have another decider combinator here, which is just set so that if S is greater than 1, you could do greater than or equal to 2, or S is equal to 2, whatever. But if in this case, if S is greater than 1, then we're going to output 1 of a green check. So at this point, we'll just hook up the inputs we want to this. And here we go. So this line is outputting a set signal right now because the memory cell is empty. This means that it won the
reactor wants fuel.
The reactor had a piece or has a slot available to put in a fuel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the memory cell is 1, so there's a slot available. So with the electricity, we'll hook, when that one is hooked up, then we just need the electricity to run low. So let's see, how should we do this?
I've got the perfect thing for that. 1 sec. Pull the power away from there, and we can just throw
Can you
this
put
in
another
there.
accumulator?
Can I put what down?
Another substation here, I mean.
No, I don't
You'll
have
see.
one. Let me make one.
Oh. I'll just grab this one. Hold on.
Okay, I was gonna say I can't even make one right now.
All right, so I just connected all the wires from now. These things are still pulling from that though. So I'll just disconnect that long enough. And these things pull power, but it's such a tiny amount of power, it's going to take forever to reach that.
Oh, I got this that'll pull power really quick. It just needs power.
Go ahead.
You disconnected all my power. Okay, that should be... Oh. It already ate all of its power.
So the accumulator is draining.
Yeah.
This puts out a 1 now, meaning that this is now putting out a green check. So we'll give that power again. So now that we have a green check that is output only when the power in the accumulator is less than full, and whenever there's a slot in the memory cell here available, and the power is full, and you see the green check is gone. So we need to do something with this green check. Let's go ahead and feed it back up into the thing that inputs. So I'm going to take a green cable for this green check and to keep it from interacting with the other things up there, even though it doesn't really matter in this case. But the output of this green check is going across these cables up here, going into this inserting cell here. So if you want to drain the power again. Or it already is. All right. So there we go. It inputted into here. So the fusion reactor is now powering back up and making heat and making steam and power again. So both of these inputs are eventually going to fill up again. So let's pretend like that's happening. I'll reconnect the power to simulate the power filled back up again. And eventually this fusion reactor is going to run out of fuel because it used it all. So now we have a consumed amount. So I put a consumed in there, and down it went, and the memory cell is now 1 again. So I remove the power again. And when the power drops down 1%, it'll activate again.
There it goes. It just put a fuel in.
Yep, and we have the green check that went out again. Up until the time that the thing actually moved the thing over, because the memory cell value is now empty, you see.
Yep. And now it's back to 1.
And it will just keep repeating that as necessary.
Yep. As you see, this whole time while we've been doing this, everything's been working up here just fine. And it has actually just gotten about to where it's going to refuel itself. There it goes. You almost think we planned that. There you go. Now it's fueled itself back up. So basically, what I'm going to continue to do is build these accumulators over here, which will be my storage bank as I need more power or more power consumption comes in. But as of right now, these reactors do not get above about 7 to 800 on temperature, so I am in a perfect range where I'm not wasting potential electricity. Everything is either stored here as heat or it is stored here as electricity. And the fact that I have solar and the water pressurizers over there don't affect this steam setup whatsoever. And that's the way I want it. So thank you, Overmind, for helping me finally get this working. Thanks to everybody else who has tried.
If you hook up multiple fusion reactors, you only want the one that's pulling out to only have one of those connected. You send the green check mark to all of them that you want to insert, however, but only one of the ones that pull out will actually be detected.
Oh yeah, we have this mirrored up here onto this one, and you can see this red line that just feeds it back up there to it. This one is just an exact copy of this one, but nothing's being read off of that one. All right, so that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, as usual, leave them in the comments or stop into our Discord. I am going to make a blueprint of this area down here for anybody that wants to test it out, and I'll put that in our Factorio channel in our Discord if anybody wants to try it in their own world. And have a good one.